Welcome, friend. I am so grateful you are here with me today. What I am about to share with you might just change the way you see everything happening around us right now. Have you ever felt it, that unexplainable shift in the air, when the world looks the same, but something deep in your soul whispers that everything has changed, when ancient things that were buried for thousands of years suddenly resurface? When lights appear where they shouldn't, sounds echo before dawn, and rituals forgotten by time begin again in the most sacred places on earth. If you felt it, you are not alone. And if you haven't, stay with me, because by the end of this message, you'll understand why millions around the world are waking up to something extraordinary. Something that has been building in silence, now breaking through into our reality. This isn't about fear. This isn't about panic. This is about understanding the moment we're standing in and what it means for every single one of us. So take a breath. Settle in and let me walk you through what is happening, because the signs are here, the timeline has shifted, and whether the world sees it or not, we're living in one of the most significant moments in human history. Throughout history, whenever God prepared to move, He allowed signs to appear first, not to confuse, but to awaken, not to frighten, but to prepare. Think back to the ancient stories, the thunder and trumpet blasts at Mount Sinai, the sounds that grew louder before divine revelation, the moments when prophets sensed the atmosphere change before receiving their visions. These weren't accidents. They were divine signals that something in the unseen realm was about to break into the visible world. Today, we're witnessing that same pattern. Unusual sounds echoing in the early morning hours, unexplained lights, hovering over one of the most spiritually charged locations on earth. A sudden stillness that makes your spirit pause. These aren't random occurrences meant to entertain or confuse us. They're invitations, calls to look beyond the surface of our daily routines and recognize that the spiritual realm is closer than we think. They're nudging us to realign our hearts, sharpen our spiritual vision, and tune into what God is doing right now. When these signs appear around places of deep prophetic significance, they carry even greater weight. They remind us that God's timeline isn't dormant or distant. It is active, unfolding step by step, exactly as it was written centuries ago. And for those who are spiritually alert, these signs don't bring fear. They bring clarity, purpose, and a deeper hunger to pray and watch more closely than ever before. Now, let me take you to a place that sits at the very heart of all this, a place that has been central to biblical prophecy for thousands of years. The Temple Mount isn't just a physical location. It is a spiritual intersection where heaven and earth have touched throughout history. From Abraham's offering to Solomon's temple, from prophetic visions to divine revelation, this ground has been soaked in the presence of God and woven into the fabric of Scripture itself. What makes this place so significant is that its story didn't end in ancient times. The prophecies surrounding it reach forward into our future, into moments that believers have been watching for across generations. Even people who don't share the same faith recognize that when something happens at the Temple Mount, the entire world pays attention. Political tension, archaeological discoveries, religious activity, anything connected to this place sends ripples across nations and continents. Why? Because intuitively, humanity senses that this isn't just about stone and soil. It represents a timeline, a destiny, a promise that spans centuries. And whenever unusual activity occurs there, whether it is a sound, a light, or a ritual, conversations about prophecy, restoration, and spiritual readiness immediately accelerate. This is where faith, history, and future expectation collide. This is where believers understand that when Scripture places extraordinary importance on a location, it is wise to stay alert to what God might still be doing through it today. Now here is where things get even more profound. Among all the signs and developments, one stands out with extraordinary weight: the red heifer. If you are unfamiliar with this, let me explain why it matters so deeply. In ancient Israel, a flawless red heifer, one without blemish, without even a single mixed hair, and never used for labor, was required for one of the rarest and most sacred purification rituals. This wasn't something done casually or often. In fact, throughout Israel's entire history, this ritual was performed only a handful of times. The ashes from a single red heifer could last for generations, which meant centuries might pass before another qualifying animal appeared. Finding such a creature was extraordinarily rare even back then. But here is what is remarkable. In recent years, qualifying red heifers have been discovered and prepared. Think about that for a moment. Something so rare, so ancient, so deeply rooted in biblical tradition has resurfaced in our modern era. For those who understand the prophetic significance, this isn't just symbolic, it is a bridge between the ancient world and today. It suggests that a long dormant chapter of Scripture is awakening, that pieces of an ancient pattern are being put back into place. The very fact that this has sparked intense global debate shows its spiritual weight. Some see it as deeply meaningful, others are skeptical or even opposed. But the controversy itself reveals how powerful and disruptive this symbol truly is. When something this rare, this ancient, and this prophetically charged reappears after thousands of years, it signals that history isn't just repeating, it is preparing for its next chapter. But the red heifer isn't the only piece moving into position. There is something equally fascinating happening behind the scenes. Preparations that mirror the ancient patterns described in Scripture with stunning precision. In biblical times, before any major religious event occurred, specific preparations were always required. Gold had to be refined, garments had to be woven with exact measurements, instruments had to be crafted, and those chosen for sacred duties had to be trained. These weren't last-minute efforts. They were intentional, careful steps that signaled something significant was approaching. What is remarkable about our time is that these exact preparations are happening again. Items that belonged only to history, priestly garments, ritual instruments, temple furniture, ceremonial materials are being recreated down to the smallest detail. Craftsmen are studying ancient texts to replicate measurements and designs exactly as their ancestors did millennia ago. Training programs are being established to prepare individuals for roles that haven't been practiced in thousands of years. Even the gathering of specific resources, gold, unique fabrics, rare materials, echoes the preparations recorded in Scripture. This isn't happening by accident. It shows a deliberate desire to align with patterns that God established long ago. What once seemed distant or symbolic has now become tangible and real. And here is what is significant. Throughout history, when preparations reached completion, it often meant that anticipation was turning into readiness. These efforts don't reveal a precise timeline, but they do show that groundwork for something larger is being laid stone by stone, thread by thread. The ancient steps are being walked again, and whenever preparation reaches this level of detail, it suggests that a prophetic stage is being assembled exactly as it was centuries before. Now, let's step back and see the bigger picture, because this is where everything comes together. Spiritual alignment rarely happens through a single isolated event. Throughout Scripture, when God prepared to move, multiple signs and circumstances unfolded simultaneously, each contributing to a larger purpose. Political shifts, spiritual revival, unusual signs, and changes in the hearts of people began to overlap in ways that revealed divine orchestration rather than coincidence. We're seeing that same pattern today. Political movements, cultural unrest, renewed interest in ancient rituals, signs appearing in the natural world. All of these are converging with personal spiritual awakenings among believers worldwide. On their own, each might seem interesting but not decisive, but together they form a tapestry that reflects a larger unfolding plan. When multiple streams of events begin to run parallel, social, spiritual, historical, and prophetic, it suggests that something significant is preparing to emerge. This convergence brings clarity. It helps us separate genuine spiritual direction from noise and distraction. When various signs and movements point toward the same theme, it creates confirmation and urgency. Not fearful urgency, but purposeful urgency. It calls us to deepen our prayer life, strengthen our walk with God, and remain spiritually alert. Convergence signifies that God is aligning the physical and spiritual timelines, preparing hearts and circumstances for what He has planned. It shows that divine timing is active, not distant, and that the interconnected events of today may be guiding us toward a moment long spoken of in Scripture. So what does all this mean for you and me? How do we respond when we see these signs unfolding? Scripture gives us clear guidance: remain watchful, but not fearful. This call to watchfulness isn't rooted in panic or endless speculation. It is rooted in trust, readiness, and spiritual grounding. Yes, the world can shift rapidly. Yes, prophecy can move closer with each passing season. But God consistently reminds His people that His presence is our stability. When unusual signs appear or ancient rituals resurface, the natural reaction might be anxiety or confusion. But faith teaches us that these moments are invitations to draw nearer to God, not retreat into fear. Watchfulness means keeping our hearts steady, our minds clear, and our spirits sensitive to His guidance. It is not about obsessing over every headline or becoming consumed by speculation. It is about staying spiritually awake, alert, and aligned with God's purposes. This watchfulness is also an act of obedience. Jesus repeatedly urged His followers to stay awake, stay alert, and discern the times. Not because danger was inevitable, but because awareness strengthens faith. When we pay attention to what God is doing, our lives become aligned with His purposes instead of being swept away by the world's noise and uncertainty. Watchfulness deepens intimacy with God, sharpens spiritual perception, and creates peace even when everything around us feels unsteady. And here is the key: watching must be paired with prayer. Watching without praying leads to worry, but watching through prayer leads to strength. Prayer anchors the heart, brings clarity, and keeps us grounded in truth rather than speculation. When global events accelerate or ancient patterns reappear, those who remain prayerful aren't shaken because they understand that God is still sovereign over every timeline and every transition. This call to watch ultimately protects us from drifting spiritually. It keeps us centered on God's promises rather than overwhelmed by controversy or headlines. Watchfulness transforms uncertainty into expectation, confusion into clarity, and fear into confidence. It reminds us that no matter what unfolds, God's presence remains our refuge, our wisdom, and our steady guide through every season of change. So here we are. We've walked through the signs, the rituals, the preparations, the convergence, and the unmistakable stirring in the spiritual atmosphere. As we pull everything together, one truth becomes crystal clear. We are living in a moment charged with divine purpose. Nothing happening today is random. Nothing is unfolding without meaning. These events remind us that God's timeline is alive, that prophecy continues its quiet but steady march forward, and that every single believer is being called into deeper awareness, not to fear, not to obsess, but to stand firm in faith, to stay prayerful, and to keep our eyes wide open to the movement of God, both in the world around us and in our own hearts. The shifting of timelines and the reawakening of ancient patterns aren't just signals, they're invitations. Invitations to rise above distraction, to strengthen our walk with God, and to prepare our hearts for whatever He is shaping next. You were chosen to live in this moment for a reason. You weren't born into this generation by accident. You were placed in this time with purpose, with intention, with divine design. And if you stay alert, stay grounded, and stay faithful, you will walk through every season ahead with courage, wisdom, and peace that surpasses all understanding. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here, for seeking understanding, and for keeping your spirit open to the deeper things of God. May your journey forward be blessed with clarity and strength. May unwavering hope fill your days. May goodness surround you like a shield. May peace settle over every area of your life, and may every step you take draw you closer to the purpose you were created to fulfill. Stay encouraged, stay watchful, stay blessed, and remember, you are not walking this path alone. God is with you, guiding you, strengthening you, preparing you for everything ahead. Thank you for being part of this message. Now go forward with confidence, knowing that the best is yet to come.